We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland. Fun half. John Thune today has said, or supposedly it's reported, that he has told Donald Trump that Pete Hegseth, weekend host of Fox and Friends, and former head of, I think, two organizations where he was asked to quit, or he was sort of like eased out because of his excessive drinking and inappropriate behavior with women, and also the guy who was accused by a woman of rape, who was forced to sign an NDA or did so, I guess.
After going to the police, and then also a nurse where she spoke about her feelings about what happened to her that evening.
And Pete Hegseth, again, who has not run any organization with a budget greater than $15,000. And I can tell you, as someone who runs an enterprise with a budget greater than $15,000, I am not qualified for anything involved in running large organizations.
Get a little liquor in you and you might feel a little more confident.
But
that's true. Maybe, yeah.
The value.
Maybe I'm just a little bit too uptight. But
perhaps the organizations he was running, we should say, at least one of them was a Koch brothers funded attempt to privatize the VA. So like he's been down the conservative kind of, I don't know, rabbit hole for quite a while. Not rabbit hole, but he's been a good soldier for their causes. And that's concerning to me if they want to continue to privatize like things in the DOD.
Here is Lindsey Graham, however, and this is what's interesting. Pete Hegseth is sort of selling himself as a guy who's going to not engage in wars, right? Isn't that his big thing? Like, now, I don't know if anybody believes this, but that's supposedly the pitch and why they don't want him. But here's Lindsey Graham with a twist on that, with speaking of someone who, speaking of drinking, with Maria Bartiromo. Here is Lindsey Graham.
Will support whatever gets us over the line, but I am worried about delay when it comes to border security.
Senator,
delay equals danger.
I'm going to get into that with Senator Ron Johnson. Real quick on these cabinet nominations. Look, Giorgia Meloni, Prime Minister of Italy, in Mar-a-Lago this weekend with President Trump. No doubt talking about the threats on the global stage. What are your thoughts here in terms of the terrorism element and getting President Trump's national security team in place? Do you have confidence that all of his cabinet nominees will be confirmed?
Yeah, I do, and I want to do them sooner rather than later. When President Trump left office, we had the most secure border in American history. The caliphate was destroyed, ISIS was destroyed, and Iran was in a box. We killed Soleimani, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard leader. The last 4 years have been a friggin' disaster. They rolled back every policy that worked on the border. They went back into the Iran nuclear agreement, giving the Ayatollah hundreds of millions of dollars. As you
Pause it for a second. All right, these are just two
egregious lies.
Egregious, and in many respects, lamentable lies. Bradley, can you Google the number of immigrants coming across the border? Historical. Maybe we can get a chart. Now, I have a real problem with the Biden administration's immigration policy. But the fact of the matter is that to the extent that we are denying people asylum, to the extent that we are preventing people from having a better way of life, you can look at where we are in August of 2024, at least, and it's actually down from there. Versus, let's say, May 2019. Now, of course, it dropped during the COVID, and there was a lot of pent-up demand, as it were.
Because of Title 42, and then you see what it basically Biden it expired in 2023 earlier. If that's maybe we should look that up.
But basically, we are down now. Of course, Obama had the numbers at a real low ebb because he was deporting more people than many in history. But Graham's he's just lying. And in terms of the Iranian nuclear deal, Biden also failed to get back into that.
Right.
All of the fact of the matter is that the reason why these any type of monies were returned to Iran or released on some level is because Trump unilaterally left the deal.
And the idea that it's that we're paying Iran for this deal, which the Republicans like to say
their
over
money.
and over again, we unfroze assets that we froze in order to incentivize them to agree to a deal that was working.
Went back into the Iran nuclear agreement, giving out to hundreds of millions of dollars is used for terrorism. And yeah, the confirmations, do them now, do them quick, get them all done in January, February. We need our team on the field. We need FBI director. We need an attorney general. We need them all. Get it done. We got to get it done.
So
we're under attack here. We're at war.
You're prepared.
Wait, pause it for a second. Wait, what? We're under attack here? We're at war?
Relax, Lindsay.
I thought Pete Hegseth was going to get us out, keep us out of wars. Now we're in a war. Who are we fighting?
Oh, the cartels, apparently. Is this Lindsey Graham endorsing Donald Trump, the dove, the anti-war president's repeated musings about invading Mexico?
What's amazing about all this is just going to be like just how much of what Trump sold to his the base that they're not going to care about in 3 months.
95% of it. What about the taxes on tips stuff? I'm not hearing that, or no taxes on tips. I'm not hearing too much about that as it relates to reconciliation or any of the things that he promised.
Taxes on tips wouldn't be able to go into reconciliation, I don't think. Because it's not,
that's a big shame. I really wanted it to.
Yeah.
Yes. Democrats.
Tough one.
But prior to this, you could hear at the top of this clip that Graham is talking about why he wants to split it in two, because he wants to get the border security stuff in with the reconciliation, and then there's a lot of other stuff and the tax cuts. They want those. Those are the two things that the diehards want. The rest of the stuff it's just going to complicate things for them. And but it sounds like Mike Johnson wants to do one big, glorious, beautiful bill.
See how that goes.
Yep. Meanwhile, on the front, according to Lindsey Graham, as you know, we are at war. We're under attack. It's unclear by whom.
Doesn't matter.
It really doesn't matter.
By
We're
wokeness.
always by wokeness.
That's why we've got to bomb Iran.
Bill Cassidy, the chair of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. Again, this is coming now with word that John Thune says that Hegseth has the votes. It sounds like they may be sort of like doing some horse trading. We'll give you Hegseth, but RFK might be a problem. I don't know if RFK really is too concerned about that. He'll just go start like a anti-vax media outlet.
That might be preferable.
I think, I suspect he wouldn't have to deal with any type of like conflicts of interest or anything like that.
Aaron Rodgers is maybe retiring. Perhaps they could finally consummate that thing.
They could be co-hosts. But here is Senator Bill Cassidy coming out, and really, this is heresy for Trump supporters.
Your committee is going to be overseeing RFK Jr.'s hearing, and there are some reports that Democratic Senators John Fetterman, Bernie Sanders might be giving him a nod of support. How is RFK Jr. faring among Democrats on your committee?
I haven't spoken to him about it. I just don't know. I will meet with him this coming week. I look forward to the interview. I agree with him on some things and disagree on others. The food safety, I think the ultra-processed food is a problem. Vaccinations, he's wrong on. And so I just look forward to having a good dialogue with him on that.
Okay.
Vaccinations he's wrong on? Could you elaborate, please, Senator?
So this
No, we're not going to be talking about that.
That will be fascinating. Do they try to sell this to Donald Trump with Operation Warp Speed and try to appeal to his ego on that front? Because John Thune, the Republican caucus in the Senate, this was McConnell's handpicked guy, right? So they kind of repudiated Donald Trump by not going with what he endorsed Rick Scott at the 11th hour. The Senate Republicans still want to continue Mitch McConnell's legacy of working for corporate power in a very straightforward way. I mean, Mitch McConnell contracted polio at one point and it affected his life. He's been very critical of RFK Jr. So maybe you're right. The idea, though, that Hexit...
It's a real shame because I so much wanted to regulate food processing and bad food out, like clean up McDonald's and get rid of corn subsidies, but I guess
No processed food, okay.
didn't want that.
Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out, but they don't care too much about the Hexeth rape stuff. They're fine with that.
Well, that cuts both ways.
Yeah.
It's nice to have folks that you can see eye to eye on.
Right. He sees himself in Hexeth.
It's going to be interesting hearings to see RFK Jr. Sort of walk away from his vaccination stuff, if he will. I mean, we'll get a sense at that point where he thinks is most lucrative. Also, don't forget, it's not just Hegseth and RFK and every other lunatic, frankly, who is problematic in terms of who's going to be heading these departments. And I will say this, that much of these people are figureheads. The real damage to most of these entities are going to be done by people whose names we will barely be aware of. Their deputies, their undersecretaries, the middle to upper management. So in some respects, I feel somewhat comfortable having these lunatics atop of these agencies. Having Betsy DeVos at the Department of Education was helpful insofar as she was a lunatic and could bring attention to what they were doing in the the Department of Education. And of course, she's not the one doing this. It's all the people underneath her. She certainly has no problem with what's being done, but it is helpful to have cartoon villains at the top of these places who are easy targets to, draw the public's attention to. This person, the director of national intelligence, I would imagine, is going to be more problematic for other people in government than necessarily like the American public. I mean, I don't know if there is a director of national intelligence that's going to, that normal people can be like, oh, this person's fighting for me, or fighting for U.S. peace but
I agree, but it's might be a bit problematic if our director of national intelligence is, say, just in theory, a member of a cult. That's pretty compromising, I would say.
Oh, really? Well, I don't know. Here's Tulsi Gabbard. Now, to be fair, this was a full 9 years ago. Mm-hmm. This is back when she was a Democrat. Here's Tulsi Gabbard in a video, August 2015, commemorating and praising the leaders of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. Interesting.
Those of us who are the spiritual children and grandchildren of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, would all be lost orphans were it not for His compassion and mercy. My Gurudev, Srila Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa, has said that while we will never be able to repay the debt of gratitude that we all owe Srila Prabhupada, what we can do is be pleasing to him by always taking shelter in the holy names of Krishna. By taking shelter in the names of Krishna, we too may become lovers of Krishna, whose lives are motivated by compassion and love for others. My dear friends, in this way, with the sweet names of Krishna always upon our lips and in our hearts, we will always be able to transmit the transcendental nature and glories of Srila Prabhupada's journey to the United States of America and the Western world. So on this historic and auspicious day, we should take this opportunity to beg for the blessing of Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, so that we too can taste the nectar of love for Krishna and be motivated by compassion to use our lives working for the spiritual and material well-being of others.
So, okay.
Except Muslims.
Again, I
Yeah,
think
except Muslims.
Except for Muslims, yes.
You get the sense of the vacancy behind her eyes there. So, like, we've had Mike Preisner on to talk about this, and I just really think that the cult element of this is not being discussed enough with her. Like, so I guess she and her family are a part of this thing called the Science of Identity Foundation, which was an offshoot of the Hare Krishnas. And I think they actually rejected Science of Identity because there was this guy named Chris Butler who renamed himself something else, and that's who she's referring to in the video, who has been accused of rampant abuse within this cult, of children as well, showing them sexual material, and the underpinning of like
Virulently anti
Muslim
LGBT
and anti-LGBTQ. But like, why when people talk about in the mainstream media, like, oh, she loves authoritarian dictators or whatever, it's such a small sliver of what the reality is. It's because she's a part of this organization that is virulently Islamophobic. So she doesn't didn't like Assad for reasons that were anti-imperialist or whatever. The reason that she doesn't speak out about the genocide in Gaza is the same reason that she was supportive of Assad. It's because she's okay with slaughter as long as it's against Muslim people. She also was in favor of the torture regime under the Bush administration. She was doing media tours under Obama about how he wouldn't say radical Islamic terrorism.
Yeah.
So the two things really that motivate her, if there's anything, because like you see how it's just, there's not much behind there, but it's Islamophobia and it's LGBTQ hatred, and it's all from this cult, which
well,
no
wait.
one's, yeah.
You're forgetting the nectar of love of Krishna.
You're right. You're right.
Three things that motivate her.
I don't. Again, they rejected her
I want to just also just say
crew.
that I don't. I mean, listen, cults are particularly nefarious in the way that they warp the brains of people in them and turn them into weird authoritarian and it's very difficult to deal with even coming out of a cult, never mind staying in a cult, in terms of what it does to your worldview and your ability to function within society. It inhibits your ability. But let me also just say, and this isn't in her defense necessarily, but it's to be even-handed. I also think that J.D. Vance, as a member of either Opus Dei or Opus Dei adjacent TradCon Catholicism,
Yep.
is also just as twisted. The authoritarianism that comes from religious fundamentalism, you want to call it authoritarianism, you want to call it, ultimately patriarchy, or some form of like religious fundamentalist hierarchy. This is all bad things. These are all bad things to have in if you are someone who cares about democracy, if you're someone, and I don't mean like, Disney World democracy, but I'm talking about sort of like input and a sense that everyone has some measure of sovereignty and that the government should in some way reflect the will of the people, as opposed to a bunch of in loco parentheses, parenthesis.
Yeah.
Of
We just had someone on to talk about Opus Dei, so it's not about Hinduism as a religion, it's about cults and that kind of mentality and what that breeds, and the compromised position that puts people in if they're going to be in high levels of government, like the Director of National Intelligence.
Yeah, I think like the effect being in a cult has on your intelligence, maybe not want to be Director of National Intelligence. I don't know if this is true, but it's something that I wish I could tell Michael, because I think he'd think is funny. Anil Dash, who's been in the studio actually for the Two Dope Boys show, tweeted out, Gabbard has no South Asian ancestry. Nobody in her family does. They're all just members of this cult and fetishize their version of Hinduism. She regularly blurs this line, lets people misinterpret her first name to imply that she's a member of our communities, but she's not. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it is, if true, funny to me that I didn't suspect that at all, but she's a big figure.
And would be keeping with said cult leaders' teachings. Chris Butler, who renamed himself something that would be a bit more appropriating.
Meanwhile, it was the American Historical Association. This is an association that represents like 10,000 historians in this country, academics, voted over, I guess it was on, maybe it was on Sunday, to condemn, it voted 428 to 88. This is at the group's annual conference. That is an overwhelming number of people to approve a resolution opposing scholasticide in Gaza and the U.S. government's funding of Israel's war. Scholasticide means the intentional eradication of an education system. The resolution, which says Israel's military campaign has effectively obliterated Gaza's education system, calls for a permanent ceasefire and for the association to form a committee to help rebuild Gaza's educational infrastructure. Now, I've seen some people sort of say, like, what's the point of this? Where's the material? The value of this, aside from it being recognized by scholars as to what's happened there, and increasingly we're seeing more and more Israelis as well recognize that what's going on there is genocide. But the value is that on college campuses, where we have seen administrators attempt to shut down protests about what the U.S. is doing in support of Israel and claim that it is a function of anti-Semitism. I have no doubt there are anti-Semites on college campuses. There are anti-Semites that have always been on college campuses. There are also vehement anti-Palestinians on college campuses. But the idea that you have academics being punished by the administration for being supportive of Palestinians, for speaking out against Israel, this is going to make it a lot harder to do. And it's going to make it a lot harder to justify these crackdowns because these protests are going to continue. And it's also just important to have it on the record.
I just want you to ponder that for a moment, right? The thousands and thousands of children who have not had any education and have been out of school at the very least, but also experiencing high levels of starvation and malnutrition and dehydration and the trauma of that since October 2023. This entire generation, if anybody who does survive, will both have physical scars, and you see images of children, little girls with their hair falling out from stress because of how sad and terrified they are, but also just a generation lost in terms of being able to educate themselves and grow in a normal developmental pattern even within the existing structure of like being inside of an open air prison that Gaza was previously.
And let's be clear, about 1 million of the 2 million people there, maybe more, are below the age of 18.
Yep.
So when you have wiped out an entire education system, you're talking about like this is not some platitude, the future of these people. I mean, like this is a very, very like substantial material implications. I mean, aside from all the other horrors that are going on there. Here is an UNRWA official describing conditions in what she saw in Gaza, a Gaza hospital. Again, we've reported in northern Gaza, not virtually, there are no medical facilities. In the rest of Gaza, there's barely any.
So I've been in Nasser Hospital after one of these mass casualty events, so the strike in Mawasi, and it's exactly as the last couple of days has been described. In the hospital, it's chaos. There is blood on the floor. There is no hygiene equipment. Doctors are trying to mop up the blood with water. They're spreading infection. You go to one room. I've had a woman scream at me in absolute despair and horror because her son was killed in a strike in the so-called humanitarian zone. Her daughter was lying on the bed next to us, paralyzed, and she's screaming at us because she said the Israelis told us to move here because it was safe. My son is killed. My daughter is paralyzed. What do I do? Where do I go? In the next room, there's a toddler who has lost 2 limbs with no parents. And this is just on repeat. This is what we see after every incident.
Now, the Israelis are talking about ceasing quite soon cooperation with UNRWA. If they do that, what happens to the large amounts of aid needed every single day to be trucked into the Strip?
When I left Gaza just a few days and weeks ago, the people were being crushed to death waiting for food, for flour, and children have now started freezing to death because they don't have enough shelter items. This is the situation with UNRWA on the ground. This is the situation with the largest humanitarian organization doing everything they can with the rest of the United Nations.
Healthcare workers have been saying this. It's not. It's been falling on deaf ears. Like we had
evident for over a year.
Right. In October, there was a letter that we encouraged people to sign from 99 U.S. American, not terrorists, American physicians, surgeons, nurses, midwives who had volunteered in Gaza. And they said that the death toll was at minimum, based on their calculation, 118,000. And we're still seeing this like 43,000 death toll number being repeated. Like,
that's just so everyone who comments on it in like establishment newspapers can feel slightly better when they say sit down with Anthony Blinken over a kale salad. They say like, oh, what about the 40,000 people that have been killed? Because if you actually said, hey, you in your Senate confirmation said that the Chinese were doing a genocide against the Uyghurs. Could you also use that word with what's going on in Palestine? And Blinken just says no. And that's,
well, let's listen to that. Let's listen to this.
Or read it, right? It's text interview. I think.
We have an interview.
Oh, okay.
This is number 10.
Sorry.
This is, I don't know if it's specifically that interview you're referencing.
No, mine was the Financial Times.
This is
New York Times.
This is the New York Times.
Secretary Blinken worry that perhaps you have been presiding over what the world will see as a genocide?
No, it's not, first of all. Second, as to how the world sees it, I can't fully answer to that. But everyone has to look at the facts and draw their own conclusions from those facts.
We have.
And my conclusions are clear. I think as well, there is, in the wake of this horrific suffering, the traumatization of the Israeli population, the Palestinian population, and many others, there's also a light.
All right, I can't.
I know.
Look, it has been my position, like, it doesn't matter what you call it. But it does matter to them. But this is what's fascinating. Click on that. This is a Holocaust museum in Houston. There was apparently, according to a Holocaust museum in Houston, and I don't know, maybe it's not recognized by other Holocaust museums. I'm not sure, but well, you could go. I guess you could go to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. But let's just stay here. Genocide in Bosnia. Let's just scroll down. Starting in 1992, Serbia set out to ethnically cleanse Bosnian territory by systemically moving all Bosnian Muslims. Serbia, with Bosnian Serbs, attacked Bosniaks with former Yugoslavian military equipment. The Security Council decided that these enclaves should be safe area protected by a contingent of UN peacekeepers. Serbs committed the largest massacre in Europe in one such area. An estimated 23,000 women and elderly people were put on buses and driven to Muslim-controlled territory, while 8,000 battle-aged men were slaughtered and detained. Now, my understanding of people who complain about the saying that what's going on in Gaza, where incidentally in northern Gaza, most people have been expelled relative to who were there a year ago, have been expelled and driven south. Certainly more than 8,000 men have been killed in Gaza. We know that that's probably 3 times that amount of children have been killed. But my understanding from people who say it's not a genocide is like, well, not everybody's dead.
Well,
I mean, that's it's just objectively a genocide. Like, whether like everyone's dead, like, okay, maybe if it gets to 200,000, we can call it a Holocaust or something like that. Like, it's just a genocide. Like, there's no. I just think
there's no ambiguity.
It's no ambiguity, and it's a fake. The idea that there is just a waste of time.
I mean, I wish that I don't know what that New York Times reporter did if she followed up with. I mean, she did good follow-ups with J.D. Vance prior to the election with his interviews, but she should have said, "Is Amnesty International, are they full of anti-Semites?" Because they just concluded that Israel.
Well,
how about Human Rights Watch?
He was good enough to say other people might think it is. I just don't.
Yeah. I guess.
I mean, he should be locked up, frankly.
Yeah, that's as you said, it's the banality of evil, right? Where you're sitting there doing PR spin for them.
I mean, he could be locked up, and people could just simply say, like, you think you're locked up,
yeah, exactly.
but we don't.
Yeah. I don't see you in the stockade. I don't see your arms and head through a stockade right now. You might think and feel like they're in a stockade.
And like, this is just, I saw the movie The Brutalist last week, right? Like, which is about the Holocaust in many ways. And there's a character there who has osteoporosis from her malnutrition in a concentration camp and can't walk. And all I could think about was Gaza and how many thousands of Palestinians are going to experience similar health outcomes if they're lucky enough to even survive this. Their lives will be destroyed. And if you don't see that connection there, he's incentivized not to because he would be complicit in the genocide. But if you also can't see it, and you can only see it from the perspective of because the United States was on the right side of that war and because the Holocaust has been used, frankly, by the United States to paint ourselves internationally as the good side that's standing up against tyranny, and domestically, that's how a lot of people perceive us. If you can't see that we're inflicting that same exact damage, even if it's slightly indirectly with Israel right now, and see that historical through line, then that's just a little bit of racism, because you don't see Palestinians with the same level of humanity that you do people who are of whiter skin tone who you may know in your personal life.
Let's play this clip. This is from a YouTuber, Corey Gill Schuster, interviewing people in Jerusalem. Now, I'm convinced that in any cohort, you can find individuals who are going to say bat crap crazy things that are not reflective of the broader cohort. But there is absolutely zero indication amongst the Israeli population, and hashtag not all Israelis, but in terms of the majority, this is based upon polling. This is based upon the fact that Netanyahu is in a much better position than he was a year and a half ago. That this attitude, and frankly, I will also say, I don't have any Israeli relatives, but I definitely have people in my extended family whose perspective on this is very similar. The idea that there are no Palestinians, they're just Arabs, which, if you were to use that formulation about any other ethnicity, race, whatever you want to say, would be considered so reprehensible that none of these people would say it. Like, you would never say, hey, there's a war in the Congo and, people, or in South Africa. There's black people all over Africa. Why can't they just go into this other country? Like, you can't. The idea of someone saying that, like, I don't even remember anybody saying that, during the height of support of South Africa and apartheid, even on the right. Like, nobody would ever think to say, look, the entire continent is full of black people living in other countries. Why can't they just go there? They're not South Africans. This woman says that and worse.
How many civilians have been killed in Gaza, from what you know?
Who gives a shit?
Okay, but don't you feel like, for example, children?
Children grow up to be Arabs. I shouldn't say this. I know, I read the numbers last week. My memory died and went to heaven. I don't think children should suffer, but they're always casualties. And since they do a lot of pruervu, that is a natural result.
Do you understand why the world is so angry? Because they keep seeing
overall, overall, the world does not really understand what's going on here. They do not grasp the concept that Israel was attacked. And Palestinians, there is no such thing as Palestinians. They're Arabs who have many countries to flee to and nobody wants them to. But if we do call them Palestinians, their parents use them as human shields to gain sympathy. The natural instinct of a Jewish mother is to protect her child. Palestinian women do not have that.
How do you know this?
From years of living here.
Can you give an example of something you've seen?
That is, you just see in real time the dehumanization. I'm a mother. I have the motherly instinct like a human being to protect my children. The Palestinians, they don't have that inherently, is what she's saying.
Oh my God!
But what is
the rhetoric that we've heard from Israelis about Palestinians for decades?
I want to just show. I mean, that sentence there says everything you need to know. We are superior to them. I am loving towards my children. They put their children in harm's way. Like, that is basically how you make an entire population of human beings into essentially animals. And like, look at this lovely walk she's on. I don't know where she's at, but wearing her sun hat and walking around in some place in Israel, it seems. Like, that is the zone of interest. When we're drawing parallels, that is on the other side, just miles away, people are being systemically exterminated. And here's essentially her saying, it is what it is. And like, that's just brainwashing. I don't know.
Palestinian women do not have that.
How do you know this?
From years of living here.
Can you give an example of something you've seen?
as I said, my memory died and went to heaven. But I read newspapers every single day, and I've read many. I've
Pause
read
it for a
many
second.
different.
Pause it. I'm sorry. Didn't she just say from living here for years? I can read newspapers. I don't live there. Was there something you've seen? No. In other words, like my total bigotry and racism is just founded upon what I've read to support that for years and years. The idea of parents not just using their kids as a prop to get sympathy. It's just so twisted. It is so twisted. I mean, it really, you don't even need comment. I mean, everybody knows
the
it's
circular logic of we are more human because we care about the children, but they don't because they put their children in harm's way, which is why we have to bomb the children and over again. Like, there's no end to that. It's just another. If you create, like, point out their logical fallacy about their so-called humanity, they just come up with another reason why they're superior to Palestinians.
It's not sincere. It's not sincere that they think
they're just trying to rationalize
it's a
racism.
public and publicly too. Because I got a feeling a lot of these people, if they said, look, if some kid wasn't being used as a human shield, but was in a completely different area, but that still got a bomb dropped on them, that's just what happens.
Well,
I don't
that.
actually care. Exactly.
She said, "Who cares? Oh, I shouldn't say that," and then uses
and then
this.
does the
Right.
propaganda line. But this is actually a lot, frankly, more refreshing than what we deal with from like the State Department or the press. That says like, oh, this is actually just like a difficult military thing where people are trying to. No, this is the actual sentiment that's being delivered for every time Joe Biden puts billions of dollars of arms out across the Atlantic. This is what's being delivered for.
And you want to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I read newspapers every single day, and I've read many different stories where the woman took her child and put her in front, and then she thought this is going to gain sympathy with her readers around the world. And it does. It is successful for them.
Do you know?
Yeah. Yep.
I don't want to hear her pissing herself about like some rocket attack alarms that are going off in Israel then. Because like if that's the case, I mean, basically the Palestinians live under constant brutalization, but we're supposed to have endless sympathy for her perspective.
A class was delayed in Haifa because of, who cares? Stop blowing up every single educational building in Gaza. Maybe people might care.
Really twisted. I don't know how people. I mean,
it's a population that needs a signal from America that this is not acceptable.
Yep.
And we don't do that at all.
Should we take some phone calls?
Sure.
Or any of these other clips? Let's take a look at these clips if there's any here. Folks, the number is 646-257-3920. 646-257-3920 is the number. You can call in. You will not be on hold for more than 28 minutes. Texas left, it's 2025. That's correct. I got it wrong. Dr. Chaos, MD. Happy January 6th, everyone. Saw my Trump-supporting neighbor flying the U.S. flag at half-mast and realized this may be a new federal holiday soon. Would prefer voting day, though. Left is best.
Why at half-mast?
Because this is the day that January 6th Patriots got imprisoned.
Oh, okay.
Jennifer from St. Louis. Today I learned that if you dink around enough on snow day morning, you can have breakfast while listening to the live show. There you go. JJ. They're in a war against woke. Ginger Squatch. I've been listening to G-War. What is G-War? Gwar.
Oh.
All morning. If you could do the show pretending to be intergalactic monsters, that would be helpful. Thanks in advance.
Gwar is a band, a metal band, I believe,
remember
that does really extreme.
Yeah.
But they also do they shoot like foam into the crowd, and like it's a really messy show.
Very Jonas Brothers of them.
Bingo Dango. Pull up the rage posting by free speech absolutists like Barry Weiss and Musk about the WAPO cartoon censorship. Wait, where is it?
Oh, gosh.
Bobbins Payne. I used to work in the UK with a guy who turned out to be one of the Asian groomers. Happy to call in and discuss the whole thing. A lot of misinformation about there. Nobody discussing lack of funding in child social care. I'm not even sure I know what that means. Teacher Dan. Since the Trump win, I'm trying to catch up with left-adjacent independent sources, but it's been a headache because everybody is B about TYT. I don't know what B means. Then there's a bunch of asterisks.
Bitching.
Oh, it's either that or it's a deep dive lecture analysis on how clueless American voters is because they just don't realize how historically great Biden was. That's Pac-Man Beasley. Or how racist and hateful American voters are because they just get turned on by that shit. Well, I appreciate TMR for the smattering of vehemence regarding the predatory nature of the health insurance industry. I've yet to hear any of these platforms discuss the obvious deceit evolution to open disdain the Democratic establishment has for its assumed base since Clinton won has become a courting of the upper crusties. There's, maybe we'll go do a deep dive on this tomorrow, but we're starting to get more of the data, the actual voting data, as opposed to exit polls. And what is coming increasingly clear is that Donald Trump really didn't gain any new voters beyond what one would expect from an increase in population. In other words, the percentage of eligible voters that he got basically the same as it was in 2020.
Yeah.
But it was Harris who got a not much lower, but all it takes is a couple of percentage points lower of her eligible voters based upon 2020.
The anti-MAGA voters did not show up. They may have stayed on their couch, but it wasn't like there was this seismic mandate that the Republicans were trying to say. And,
in many respects, this is like consistent with what, Jeet here has been arguing about system, anti-system.
And Matt was warning about this before the election with like the low propensity partisans who ended up some of them, a lot of them stayed home in that coalition.
The Trump low propensity voters showed up for Trump in the same way that they did in 2020. But the Democratic leaning ones didn't because they weren't inspired by negative partisanship.
Beyonce.
Or Harris or they may have been depressed too because
Beyonce
of things
didn't
like
actually sing. So
she did not.
But that's the thing is like
Gaza.
I just remember Joy Reid saying like she had everything this time, including Taylor Swift. It's like Hillary had Beyonce in 2016 too. Why do we keep expecting this to move the needle?
I wouldn't even know Beyonce if she was sitting in this office.
It's idiots that wanted their concert day to be also their politics.
But also, look, I don't know how much Beyonce got paid. It was a lot, right?
Yeah.
But I will tell you now.
That's another scandal, I think.
I will tell you right now. When Beyonce gets paid, I don't know, $1 million, there's a lot of other people who make a lot of money too.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Did you see those influencers?
There's not a lot of money getting paid to people going out and canvassing. There's just not a lot of ways to skim off that game.
Yeah. And even the canvassing operation, like part of what gave them confidence was they were out knocking Trump and, Elon was doing some algorithmic politics. But at the end of the day, the Democrats just didn't have a message that could drive people, even if they're doing all the things and coloring inside the lines. That's what people refer to when they talk about the campaign in that way. Like, it's not like there were these glaring things like with Hillary not going to the swing states, but it was the message that was the problem.
Yeah, there was a complete lack of, not a complete lack, but there's a complete lack of coherence to a message.
Yeah.
I would also argue that just being a pro-corporate message delivered by Mark Cuban would not have been effective. I don't think those people sitting on the couch were sitting there going like, you're not quite corporate enough.
Appeal to me more as an as a hopeful entrepreneur instead of what I am, a working person, which Democrats can't do. You have to be, here's a tax deductible thing, or here's a way to start a business.
Well, but also remember, like, there's a lot of people who got booted off of Medicaid. There's a lot of people who lost. I mean, so many people lost the the child tax credit. Now, I am very aware of why that child tax credit went away. I can get broad. I can get nuanced about it. I can say that, it's Biden's fault for not bringing Build Back Better up in June of 2021. I can say that it was because they split it into two bills, and Pelosi allowed it to be split up in two bills. I can say that it was Manchin and Sinema, but I'll tell you who cannot say that: the 19 million people who should have voted if Biden or Harris, I should say, the Democratic ticket had maintained its share of the voting population from 2020, like Trump did. Those 19 million people could not. All they did is experience the loss. Now, they maybe should have known that it came from Biden, even though it came like a month after, Biden's in office. So it's like,
but
you can say there should be far greater expectation of voters to know these things, but you also should be savvy enough to know that they don't.
But I'm sorry, like, it also may have bridged that gap if there was somebody at the top of the ticket who was a communicator who could have explained some of these things, who could have repeated talking about the child tax credit over and over again.
Well,
like,
but even Harris didn't have,
but
she
the
may
die
have
was
supported
cast.
these things. The die,
By the time she entered the race, that you can't make whatever.
She may not have been able to make it.
She wasn't the best communicator, and also, but the problem is that Biden for 2+ years wasn't talking.
Yep.
Like what, and so I think that created a massive opportunity for the Republicans.
International socialists, Sam, you have to wonder, given millions of Musk pumped into Trump, was Musk's main effort in cutting Democrats' vote in key states using social medias? There's no doubt that also contributed to it, right? Like, I mean, and Gaza was a big part of that, I think, too. I mean, all of these things contributed to it. But there are some things that you have control over, and there are some things that you don't. You don't have control over Elon Musk because you have failed to pass a wealth tax. You don't have control over Elon Musk doing this in a race. You don't. Going forward, you don't. In fact, going forward from 2 years ago, you don't. So based upon that reality, right? Like, you can't complain, hey man, it's going to be a tough football game because it's raining. No, you got to deal with it.
Yeah, right.
You got to deal with it.
And they try to deal with it with Mark Cuban instead of, running against billionaires.
Right.
There's a piece in the New York Times here that Current Affairs pointed out. There was a $2.5 million directed to 3 digital agencies that worked with online influencers, records show. The campaign spent around $900,000 to book it with the Las Vegas Sphere. Pull this over, Bradley. This is one of the influencers. Put the picture of him with Biden first.
Oh, yes.
This is, look at influencer there with Joe happily. And let's get a taste of some of the...
Oh, you fake ass Bernie, bro. Stop putting this big black woman with these yellow arms under my post. Fuck Rashida, bitch. I don't give a damn about this bitch.
I don't fuck with AOC. AOC can't do a motherfucking thing for me but make me a goddamn martini, bitch. She can't do shit for me. She needs to take her ass back to the motherfucking bartending days, bitch. She ain't done shit.
Fuck Bernie Sanders. Telling it.
Okay.
I think we get the idea.
Great job there.
Those are the influencers that the Democratic Party is coveting. People that it's
brainless. It's as bad as MAGA, this sort of like partisan Democrat thing, and maybe even more harmful because the one party that should be able to deliver for people is listening to these idiots and bringing them into the White House.
But on the politics of it, it's actually way worse than what MAGA does, right? Yeah. Because their paid influencers are speaking to what the base wants, which is the Trump cult stuff. Right. Our paid influencers are telling the base that they're stupid and that AOC should be making this guy a drink. I mean,
unbelievable.
That people have been pointing out why all these idiots got invited, and I think Jamie Harrison is a good place to start the investigation.
What entity paid them?
I'm not sure. And this is just the surmise by the current affairs that this guy got some of the $2.5 million toward 3 digital agencies. It'd be good to know those digital agencies and who worked with them.
Yeah. I can tell you right now unequivocally, we did not.
It would be interesting to see who got that money. I mean, maybe some of these money people are figuring out, like they can fund centrist Democrat kind of influencers on the internet.
I just think that
it's been a wash.
The story of this stuff is just sort of sheer incompetence, right? Like, because if you're farming this stuff out to a digital agency, they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, they're just looking at they're not looking at the content. They're just looking at like the names and
the data.
Who are the big, and numbers? Like, remember when I ended up on that list that Bernie Kerik did for Giuliani of right-wing influencers?
Right.
And that must have been just because, like, somehow I got caught up in their algorithm and they just assumed, they just passed that on. I mean, had they worked in the same way, some agency might have been like, hey, Sam Cedar, I'm from the, Keep It Red agency, and we want to offer you $50,000 for all the great work you've been doing.
Right.
Along with your friends, Steven Crowder or whatnot. And they just hand this money out. Because the bottom line is somebody gets a cut.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's just business. Call from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 847.
Is it me?
Yes, it is you. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Virat from Chicago.
Wait, what? Say that again?
Virat from Chicago.
Oh, Chicago.
Virat.
You got a real Chicago accent.
You're not Barack from Chicago?
No, with the V. Yeah.
Okay.
From Chicago.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys watched this clip of Luke Beasley on Tim Pool's show. Luke Beasley's that liberal kid that was on that panel with Emma on Piers Morgan.
Oh, the one I talked over. Apologies to him.
Yeah. Anyway, he was really calm and stuff talking to him. And Tim just starts getting loud and swearing and defending the J6ers, and all I can think of, this fucker called Sam emotional,
Wow.
and it's like, and he just keeps on. It's just so infuriating, the hypocrisy, and you guys know this.
Well,
and I'm just saying the clip plays out like a Joe Rogan thing because he ends up Googling, and he looks like an idiot, but all the right wingers just call him, say he ruined Luke Beasley's career. It's just infuriating.
Oh, wait, did they end up, did they go on and actually Google that stuff? Because all of it was inaccurate.
Exactly. They did. And he, Tim just played, Tim just bullshits, And,
but they cut the clip where he's yelling at him. Because I saw, I feel like I saw, I don't know if I watched the clip.
Watch it from Luke Beasley's channel. Just play the clip. It's pretty funny. But I just find it.
Oh, let's do that. Do we have that? I mean, I don't follow Luke Beasley, but I did see, and I'm going on Twitter less and less these days because it's mostly just like, although my understanding is Elon Musk has decided that they're going to change the algorithm so everything is more rosy, which is incredibly twisted. Like if you step back and think about just like the power that this billionaire has to essentially brainwash these morons. Are you looking for that, Bradley? Brainwash these morons on Twitter. I mean, we saw it with the outlook for the economy for, how it shifted dramatically within a week or two. And which is not to say that there aren't real problems with the economy, but that was the sort of the narrative, is that these Trump voters who largely as a median age do better than Democratic voters still. We're upset about the economy, and it's just not the case. They were voting for Trump because I think in many parts they just they need some vindication. People staying home, on the other hand, I think need to be motivated to vote. Do we have that clip? I appreciate the call. We'll take a look at it.
Appreciate it.
How long is it?
Maybe we just do that tomorrow.
Yeah, let's do it tomorrow. Calling from a 908 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
Yes, it is you.
This is Pat from New Jersey.
Pat from New Jersey. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to say, first time calling, long time listener. I wanted to thank you guys so much for being one of the first progressive channels I think I ever heard talk about urbanism and just transportation from a progressive lens. So on that note, stuff like the congestion pricing in New York, I love hearing about that, and honestly would love to hear even more.
Well, wait, are you, where in Jersey are you?
I am a little bit outside of the city. I'm over in Bergen.
Oh, you're in Bergen County area. You don't need to say where. So what? Like you're an hour and 15 out, probably driving?
If I were to drive, yeah, it would be, I don't know, hour 15, a little closer than that. But
okay.
Usually I would just take the train because it's just by far the better option.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to see because there's basically been like a suburban revolt against congestion pricing. But I feel like it's going to not last too long because NJ Transit in particular, you know, it's like it's quite convenient, and even wealthy New Jersey commuters take NJ Transit.
The train out there is really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've gone into the city, I've gone into the city on the weekend, and honestly, when you get to Secaucus Junction, it is packed there. There's so much demand for more NJ Transit.
Yeah, it's going to be good because I think some of the money that's going to be raised from this goes to not just MTA funding, but it's also going to go towards the LARR and NJ Transit, is my understanding.
I wish there was an ability to have, you know, one or two more Metro North lines. I mean, there's one that goes up to Poughkeepsie, but the bottom line is it probably should be double, triple, 4 times the cost, frankly.
Yeah, and quadruple for Cybertrucks.
Yeah, they originally, I'm sure you guys are aware, they originally wanted like 27. I think what got approved before Hochul stepped in was something around 17 or 18, something like that. And then 9 was what they worked it down to after her pause.
It's going to improve the quality of life. And for people who really need to drive into the city, really need to, it's going to improve their experience and also save them time. I mean, somebody was making this point, online today where, you know, a guy who had to drive in from New Jersey, he's like, and actually the commute took me an hour less. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, you're driving into the city and you save $9. I mean, it costs you $9, but you're saving an hour. Worth it.
Yeah, and also you can get a dispensation, I believe, from the fee if you make
under 60 grand.
Under 60 grand, and something like over half of MTA or of subway stations in the city are not handicap accessible. Which, by the way, I'm not sure about the statute, but shouldn't that be illegal on the federal level? Like, you're supposed to be able to make your transit stops, at least a majority of them, accessible for handicap people. So
I know they've been adding elevators, but they need more money.
They need more money, and this is going to help that. So
they're working on it. It's a part of a longer process. I just wanted to say that I think, if I heard correctly earlier, I think somebody mentioned that New Jersey was getting some of this money. My understanding is that's actually not true. That was something that was on the table, but New Jersey chose to reject it and pursue this stupid lawsuit that they've been doing for the last like 6-8 months. So they actually, my understanding is they are not getting a dime now. So they actually screwed themselves.
Whoopsie.
But they are trying to expand the freeway.
Yeah, they're wasting about $11 billion doing that.
Oh, well, Josh Gottheimer will fix it.
had so many thoughts on him.
Yeah.
I wanted to just say two things real quick before I duck off. Number one is for anyone who's listening who is in New Jersey, there are a lot of organizations within New Jersey that are not suburban car-brained and do want to actually improve transit and bike access and everything around the state. So please do look up some organizations.
Yeah.
NJ Bike and Pedestrian Walk is great. Hudson County Complete Streets does fantastic work. And there are various other organizations around the state. And then two, the only other thing I want to say before I duck off is I have been kicking around an idea since the election about something that Democrats could run on come 2028, which is sort of informed by Kyle from Secular Talk, although I do have to say I came up with this before I heard him sort of get into more of his like idea that Democrats need to be more combative, more controversial and all. And that is, I think a slogan like being the first administration to jail a billionaire would actually be a pretty engaging approach for trying to rally up some more populist support for our side. And I just kind of wanted to throw that out there and get your guys' thoughts on something like that.
I mean, I don't think you need to jail billionaires. I just think that you need to make it illegal to become a billionaire. In other words, our laws should be structured in such a way that you are not physically capable of amassing that kind of wealth. And I would also add to that you don't have to go to jail if you're a billionaire. The law would be we have confiscatory taxation on wealth, and we're going to take away, if you have whatever percentage you have, whatever amount of money you have over, let's say, I don't know, 200 million, 300 million, 400 million, you'll still get to own all of that money. You still have your Fursinks and your Bugattis and your whatever it is, but you can't be shopping around for what planet am I going to fly to today, or what country am I going to buy. That's just, we just don't, you don't need to put them in jail. It's just you need to make being a billionaire illegal in the same way that it is illegal for you to be a monopoly, or it's, illegal to you to own whatever it is, every newspaper in a city or something like that.
I do think going after wealth is important because we focus a lot on income issues.
We have to go after wealth because we haven't been going after income for long enough. Like we're behind it, but appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Also, I'm in New York because I got accepted to NYU and Pepperdine University, and I chose New York so I wouldn't have to have a car. I'm a full supporter of the war on cars, and every city that lessens the amount of cars in their downtown is better for it.
Yeah. I do think, though, like the economic populist thing that he was trying to say, I think that when we're seeing in Canada right now with the revolt against the Liberals about, because in large part it's about housing, like the Democrats in 2028 and in 26, they can focus on healthcare and housing and have robust policy choices or sets on that front and a clear vision, because those are the kinds of things that affect people day to day.
Folks, that ends the phone call portion of our program. Nobody waited on the line for more than 25 minutes, and I'm very proud of myself. We got 3 or 4 calls in.
Very nice.
But we needed to get to this. Breaking news. Donald Trump Jr. makes an assertion. He has announced he is not doing cocaine.
Good.
Let's play this clip.
Good for him.
Donald, I'm a little disappointed. I saw a video of you possibly doing drugs. I was appalled and disgusted. I saw it on X. Was it a real video?
Hold it. Stop it for a second. Wait a second. Do they get some type of like a group discount on Botox from somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Like, what's going on with this guy's like?
He's lost a significant amount of weight.
Is he going 60 miles per hour toward the camera? Is this
Right. That is an interesting lens.
It does feel like that's like there's a lot of G-force acting on his face right now.
Do you guys have the video that is being referenced? I think we've played it before.
Oh, have we?
It's just I mean, he could have been just putting his finger in his pocket for some other reason, pulling it out and then going like this on his gums because I don't know, maybe
There's all sorts of reasons you do that.
there's a lot of reasons that you might do that on stage.
Camphor.
At a MAGA rally.
Camphor, if you have a toothache, you hide the camphor bottle in your pocket and then you rub it on your gums.
And it could have been a tobacco patch, like a really, really tiny, like microscopic one that is barely perceptible to the human eye that you also have to gum.
It's micro shoes, or what do they call that? Fuse? What was that
Zins
stuff?
or snooze?
Zins.
Snooze, yeah, micro
Wow.
snooze.
But he's in a new relationship. He and Kimberly are no longer.
Who's the new?
I follow Page 6 on Instagram, so I get a little bit of this information. It's how I was able to break the fact that Hannity and Ainsley Earhardt are engaged now to you the other day. But he's with. Okay, so this is the video. Again, this John Cooper is claiming that this is cocaine. We do not know if that is true. Here he is. But we're not seeing. Show him putting it in his pocket.
Oh, sorry. 1 second.
One more. All right. It could have been anything.
Right by your dad.
It is a weird thing to do to take your hand from your pocket to rub around your gums. I'll just say that. Like, I mean,
I don't do it.
I've
never done that.
I mean, I pick my teeth with a toothpick.
I chew my fingernails.
All right. Well, let's just hear his answer here.
He's got to show he's a good guy because he's with someone new.
Donald, I'm a little.
Oh, pause it.
disappointed.
No,
I saw
no,
a video
no,
of you-
no. That's wrong. His dad would be very, very mad. Look, all you do is Adderall.
Yes.
That's it.
Brain pills.
Chop up the Adderall.
You at it right now?
Good.
Donald, I'm a little disappointed. I saw a video of you possibly doing drugs. I was appalled and disgusted. I saw it on X. Was it a real video? I find men who do drugs to be weak. Yeah. I have a feeling that if I was Hunter Biden, if I was doing drugs, and if I was videoing it, it would probably be a big deal. I imagine you'd actually see this. I understand that according to the left, I'm the biggest cokehead or whatever it is since ever. They don't really look to their own. It's typical Democrat projection. But I think I know the video you're talking about because I was adjusting an Alp pouch, like a Zyn. I was adjusting a Zyn in my mouth. I'm literally standing next to my father and Elon Musk in front of TV camera. So just to be clear, not doing coke. Okay, that's not my thing. Never has been. Contrary to popular belief and internet lore and Democrat histrionics, it's not my thing. And I imagine if I was a big drug user, you'd probably hear about it, folks. You'd probably definitely hear about it before everyone else. So that video is me literally going like that, adjusting a Zyn pouch that slipped out of my lip. I do that. Sorry, not perfect. I think, in the latter stages of a campaign and all of that, and with all the craziness of there, I get by on adrenaline, testosterone, caffeine, and some nicotine. So that's about the extent of it, but I'm happy to address it.
Seems thrilled. He seems like he's doing better, though.
If I would have done that, I would have been caught. That's kind of what Drake said in that response.
He
I swore
sounds
I would have been arrested.
and looks a lot better than he was doing a few months ago. And no one, I'm not sure what was the reason for the bloat or the fast talking and the glassy eyes. Could have just been a lack of sleep.
I mean, yeah, and he was in a troubled relationship. Although I will say this, too, that I found interesting about his answering that question. I don't know what the video you're talking about is. Actually, no, I do know exactly what it was. I know that specific time I was readjusting a
nicotine patch.
micro patch, nicotine snooze packet or whatever he called it. Interesting. interesting that you just now. Maybe.
I don't
Maybe not.
care. The thing is no. If he's a guy that grew up in New York City with a lot of money, are we really going to expect that he's not tried some of these things before? I'm not saying it's for sure. It's like exactly what has happened, or that's the case, or whatever. But like, make it a little bit more believable, buddy. I'm not saying
I'm
I
also
don't
just
believe you.
fascinated, like why these people who are so wealthy cannot find a Botox guy to do Botox in the proper way.
Well,
I mean, is it like, aren't we like past the era of like when people are like,
it's because they're susceptible to being upsold. You're probably getting a little bit too much.
believe me, you're going to want more of this.
Right.
Well.
All right. Well, hope he's doing better.
Yep. The Zins look gross.
What's that?
This Zin stuff looks gross. I don't
Isn't
know if
it
it's that much
just
of an improvement on Coke? to be
it's
honest.
just nicotine, right? Those Zyn ones. What's the point? Do you get high from nicotine? I thought you get high from the tobacco. Or
Nicotine.
Neither.
That's what it is. It's nicotine in
Right.
the tobacco.
Addicted to it.
Right, but that's the stuff that's the stimulating part of it.
Nicotine is a stimulant.
Right, I know. Okay. But then what's the point of just having the Okay. Nicotine is the stimulating part of tobacco? This was never my vice, so I don't know anything about
yes.
tobacco.
Yes,
Okay.
that's why people have nicotine patches and
Right, but that's the part that makes you like
Yes.
wakes you alert. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
oh boy. All right, 5 more. Iowa Ryan. Homelessness went up 18% the past year. Biden must have forgotten. Indeed.
Well, Schumer's wondering why those people didn't know how much Biden did for him, because look at the lowest income bracket.
Online 37. Hey, I'm our crew. Happy January 6th. Is it true to be soon felon in chief holding a rally today? Ryan from Rochester. There's only one global power who's a nuclear threat to the world in the USA. It's the USA. We're the only country the world has used nuclear weapons in conflict. We have done so in recent times, unprovoked and during proxy warfare. It's only a theory that proxy war avoids nuclear war. 2 more. Socialist masshole. Emma, your post-TYT career is the only reason I don't regret contributing to their journalist hiring drive with money for my first job in high school. I wish I could say I have the same lack of regret about my contribution to the People's Polymarket Rebel HQ.
Well, that's nice. Thank you.
There's another person complaining about polymarket populism. Sam Skeeter.
Ugh.
Oh, God. Come on, guys. Nicotine replaces one of your neurotransmitters in your brain, acetylcholine, which is the one responsible for your general feelings of well-being. Okay.
I'm not a Girl Scout. I only ever got like dizzy from cigarettes, and I never liked it. So that's why I'm ignorant about it.
Final IM of the day.
It's funny how that's not considered a drug by those people.
Right.
No, you're addicted to drugs, bro.
Yeah. Just Zyn. Just a product that I rely on, or I'll start tweaking.
Nicola, we need Tor Sushi and Poker with the Boys merch.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Isn't it Du Bois?
Du Bois. Bradley, Matt, Emma, great job today. Folks, see you tomorrow.